Determine the left-sided limit and the right-sided limit in the two-sided limit as x approaches 1 of 2x squared minus 4x plus 1 divided by x squared minus 4x plus 3. Each of these involves the limit as x approaches 1 of 2x squared minus 4x plus 1 divided by x squared minus 4x plus 3. First thing to do is try plugging a 1 in for each of the x's. That will be a 2 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 1 divided by 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 3. 2 times 1 squared is 1, minus 4 times 1 is a minus 4 plus 1 divided by 1 squared is 1, minus 4 times 1 is a minus 4, plus 3. 2 times 1 is a 2, a minus 4 plus a 1 is a minus 3, divided by 1 minus 4 is a negative 3, plus 3. 2 minus 3 is a negative 1, negative 3 plus 3 is a 0. Now 0 in the denominator is not actually a 0 since x is only approaching 1 and never reaches it. But a limit result of a non-zero number divided by 0 is a positive infinity or a negative infinity. The sign of the infinity often depends on the side the limit approaches from, so we will have to work out each side of the limit separately. We have the left-sided limit, indicated by the negative superscript on the 1 of the entire expression. And we have the right-sided limit, indicated by the positive superscript on the 1. Of the entire expression. Let's start with the left-sided limit. First thing to do is to factor the denominator, so we can see the factor that's making 0 in the denominator. The numerator can be left alone. The denominator is a trinomial quadratic. It will factor into an x and x, two numbers that multiply to be positive 3 and add to be negative 4. Negative 3 and negative 1 take care of that. X approaching 1 here, so the factor that's making 0 in the denominator is the x minus 1. We have the left-sided limit here, so x is approaching 1 from the left side, which means it's less positive than 1, like 0.99. If plugged in for x, for the x minus 1 factor, that will be 0.99 minus 1. It'll be a negative number. Now it's approaching 1, so it's going to approach a value of 0, but it'll be a negative, so we will replace x minus 1 with a negative 0. A 1 can plug in for all other x's. That will give 2 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 1 divided by 1 minus 3 and then a negative 0 in for the x minus 1. 2 times 1 squared is 2, minus 4 times 1 is minus 4, and plus 1, divided by 1 minus 3 is a negative 2 times a negative 0. 2 minus 4 is a negative 2 plus 1 is a negative 1, divided by a negative times a negative is a positive, and a 2 times a 0 is a 0. A negative over a positive is a negative. A non-zero over a 0 is an infinity. And there's the result of the left-sided limit. The right-sided limit will work out in a similar fashion. We'll leave the numerator alone. Factor the denominator. The factor that's making the 0. Focus on that. X is approaching 1 from the right side. It's more positive than 1, like 1.01. If plugged in for x for the x minus 1, it'll be a positive. We replace that with a positive 0. we can plug a 1 in for all remaining x's. Just be sure to put a positive 0 in for the x minus 1. 2 times 1 squared is a 2, minus 4 times 1 is a minus 4, plus 1, divided by 1 minus 3 is a negative 2, times a positive 0. 2 minus 4 is negative 2, plus 1 is a negative 1, over a negative times a positive is a negative, and 2 times 0 is a 0. A negative over a negative is a positive, and non-zero over a 0 is an infinity, and there's the result of the right-sided limit. The two-sided limit depends on the results of the two one-sided limits. They do not match here, so the two-sided limit up here will be does not exist. And there's the results of the three different limits.